Hey everyone, and welcome back to another OurMFC episode. Today, me and Ben are joined with a special guest, Craig from Gazette Boro. How's it going, Craig?
Very well, thanks. And thanks for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
No worries, mate. It's really good to have you. Jumping on, like I say, having a chat with us, and like you say, just giving us some of your time. Really appreciate it, buddy. So, like I say, thank you very much for joining us.
No worries whatsoever. As I say, it's an absolute pleasure to come on and looking forward to it.
Right. Well, we'll just get cracking then. So honestly, first question, I just wanted to kind of take you right back to the very start and kind of give us like an outline of like where it all began for you, kind of in terms of like football and your interests in like journalism. Was it always journalism, that kind of thing? So do you know what I mean? If you could start right from the beginning and just kind of give us like an overview, that'd be brilliant.
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I've always absolutely loved football from a young age. I've been football mad. Stems from like my dad and uncles and things like that. I think it's pretty well known now that I'm a Manchester United fan, and that comes from one uncle in particular who kind of brainwashed me when I was a kid. And of course, at that stage, you were talking about Ferguson's kind of early '90s team with Eric Cantona, etc. And then just coming through at that point with the class of '92 yeah, as a kid, I kind of idolised David Beckham. I used to have the mohawk when I was in school and everything.
Yes.
These kind of players, these superstars at Manchester United were really impressionable on a young me, and that's kind of where my love of football came from. But in terms of journalism wasn't something I'd really thought about, if I'm honest. I went to college after doing my GCSEs, and I always kind of wanted to go into law. I've always been interested in kind of criminology and that kind of thing, and so law was kind of where I was headed when I went to college at kind of 16, 17. But the way it happened is I actually like kind of struggled in my first year of my college ES levels. For
Right.
anybody who has been to college, sorry, that's just me. Child
It's all right.
background. I struggled in my first year at college, and the way it happens is before you take your second year exams, you're already applying to university and things like that, and I was concerned that I wouldn't get the required grades to go to a university and do law, which is obviously a well subscribed subject. So I remember doing like personality tests through Acast,
All right.
which is
Yeah.
the university through, and that kind of would set you a kind of idea of what you might want to do at university. And in doing this personality test, sports journalism was something that came up from that, and it's something I'd never really thought about, to be honest. But when it popped up on this kind of suggested list based on a personality test, I thought, that'd be a brilliant job. That so that's kind of what I ended up pursuing. Went to university, did sports journalism, and yeah, I've loved it ever since. Never looked back, to be honest, because it's everything you would expect it to be. You're essentially being paid to talk about football and watch football for a living. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Sometimes how you end up in like certain job roles or certain positions that, like 5 years previous, you wouldn't have even ever
Sorry.
thought. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
he's
You
coming
wouldn't have.
to
Get in.
join us. He had
Um,
to be in.
yeah, but it is. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? And obviously, you just found yourself in that situation and thought, "I'll give it a go," and love it. Do you know what I mean? Like I say, it's one of them things, isn't it? And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely have to give a shout out to Sunderland University. I think when I started my 3-year degree on sports journalism, I believe it was the first year that Sunderland University were doing that degree, and the lecturers at Sunderland University. There's a fantastic media kind of department at Sunderland University, and I couldn't have asked for more from me 3 years at that university in terms of providing me with the skills and the education that I needed to go on and pursue this as a career. So shout out to all the lecturers at
Yeah,
Sunderland
yeah,
University.
definitely. Um, so obviously we've touched on that kind of passion for football. Obviously it's starting with United. Um, so after you got a taste of journalism as well in football. Where did it? I don't know. Like when you had journalism in mind, like where was the route for you? Was there any like set plan, or did you just kind of like go with the flow, if you like?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way of thinking. I mean, it's a very, very kind of difficult industry to break into. I think you get your degree, and that's all well and good, but you need so much more than just the degree to kind of stand out, because there's so many people wanting this job, and so few opportunities actually available. And so you kind of doing as much freelance as you possibly can, kind of, doing things essentially for free, and just trying to build a CV and a portfolio that you can show to employers. But there are so few jobs that do come up, and again, it was kind of almost, like a fate thing, like something you wouldn't have expected, because I remember after leaving university, jobs were so hard to come by, and I was, while going through university, I was working at Iceland kind of part-time,
Yeah, yeah.
just earning a bit of extra money at Iceland, and at the end of my degree they kind of agreed to put me hours up to full-time while I searched for a job, and I was almost, they did like what was called a fast-track management thing then for people who had degrees, who'd been to university. So I almost started on that path, just purely as like a kind of backup, if you like, if
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
from sports journalism came about. And so I was doing that. I was working full time at Iceland, and as I say, trying to do as much kind of freelance and portfolio I could, but there wasn't anything really about job wise, and I was really struggling. It got to the point where I was pursuing things that were completely unrelated to journalism. I got quite far in the process of becoming like an RSPCA officer.
All right. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've always loved animals. That's and so, and as I say, I mean, there was a job came up there. I was applying for jobs in the police force and things like that. Just anything that I thought I could get a good career out of, because I always had a sensible head on my shoulders. I knew I
Yeah.
wanted a good career, and as I say, there was a point where after so long, I didn't think journalism was going to happen. I didn't think there was anything going to come up, and it was the RSPCA headquarters are down in, I want to say Sussex, I believe it's Sussex, and I'd gone down there for an interview, for the interview process. I'd gone through various stages in this interview process, got so far in the process that I was invited down to the headquarters to do the interview day, and it was a day after I got back from there. That I got a phone call from the Chronicle in Newcastle, and they had a job coming up, and I'd done work experience while I was at university there, and they just had me kind of me records on file, and had this job available, and said that they thought I'd be potentially suited. Would I like to come and interview for it? And so it was almost like at a time that I'd kind of given up really on sports journalism, and
Yeah.
was pursuing other things. Somebody got in touch with me and asked me if I'd want to potentially come and interview for a job, and that was the doorway in for me. I got in at the Chronicle, and I had 6 years at the Chronicle. Initially I was kind of covering both Newcastle and Sunderland, but more as what you'd call a digital writer, really, kind of not
Yeah.
going to games in the office, the kind of stuff. But it was the doorway, it was the footway into the industry, if you like, and getting the foot in. And then that got more serious a few years ago when I started covering Sunderland full time, going to matches and everything. And then, of course, last summer the opportunity came to come and write for the Gazette and be the Boro reporter, which I took, and that's how I ended up where I am now.
And that's what I mean. It like I was just saying before. It's a little bit like a roller coaster, isn't it? Like, you don't know whether you're coming or going with this type of job role. And I know me and Ben have had conversations as well, because Ben, he's looking to do like journalism and things like that as well, and
Right, yeah.
he writes on our website as well. I mean, I'm not so much like in the journalism industry. I love writing about football and talking about football.
Yeah.
But I'm more like the marketing side. But I know Ben's very passionate about writing. We've got a couple of other people as well. So I think, like you say, you're a perfect example of kind of that. When it doesn't look like it's going to happen, don't give up. Do you know what I mean? Just keep
Yeah,
going, and
absolutely.
something could come up eventually.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
I mean, we're looking to do a couple of bits, aren't we, Ben, with Boro Women? So hopefully
Yeah, yeah.
that comes through. Just to kind of put our foot in the door as well there.
Yeah.
You know, us and Ben, we're gonna do some work for them and write some articles and things like that. And like you say, that's another little doorway, isn't it? And that's what it's all about. These little kind of opportunities and doorways that kind of come about out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely, and kind of building on that from what you said, we're doing the articles on Borough Women. You know, when I was at university, I was doing match reports for, say, in Red Star in the Northern League, and
Oh
I'd
yeah,
spend most of my weekends traveling all over the Northeast, and I absolutely loved that because you were going to watch football, and you know, like at that level, it's a completely different environment and a completely different experience to kind of, you know, being at the Riverside, for example, because it's so much closer and so much, you know, more of a community in terms of
yeah,
close knit because of how small it is. And but you know, you built, you know, by doing those match reports, you kind of built a portfolio. You proved you could do that. I'm a massive boxing fan. I'm a huge boxing fan. So I also started my own website, kind of covering the Northeast boxing scene, which I'm still massively passionate about. And you know, when I went for my interview at the Chronicle, I obviously wasn't the only person being interviewed for that role, even though they'd kind of got in touch with me about it. When I kind of spoke to the people who I ended up working with for 6 years, you know, the one thing they always said is that it was the kind of portfolio that I had. It was the stuff that I could show that I had done in terms of producing the website and doing the match reports for, say, Red Star. That was what swayed it in my favour. That was what ultimately got me the job, because I had that portfolio. So I think to anybody who was aspiring to break into the industry, then, you know, that would be my advice: would just do as much as you possibly can, even if you know, you might not think it's worthwhile or that valuable at the time that you are doing it, but it's just proving to an employer that you are capable and you know what you're doing. Because ultimately, when you come to an interview process, you're going to have everybody who's there is going to have the same qualifications, because that's why you've been interviewed. You've got those
yeah.
qualifications. What you need is the, you know, the portfolio essentially of the work to show that you're willing to put in the work to kind of be there and do it. So that would be me advice to anybody hoping to break into the industry, without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, I think a lot of people can kind of take what you've said there, and kind of run with it a bit as well. You know, like you said about finding that little spark, that little something that makes you a little bit different and stand out from the rest. And
Absolutely.
like you said, just taking opportunities while you can. I think that's definitely key. But going back, when you briefly mentioned about getting the opportunity at the Gazette, like how did that come about, and kind of covering Borough, obviously from like Sunderland and Newcastle? Where did that kind of come about?
Yeah, so it was a surprise. Well, I mean, I don't know how well documented it is, but they were all part of the same kind of wider group, which is Reach PLC, which formerly the Mirror Group.
Oh right, okay.
So yeah, all owned by the kind of one big group, as I say, which is now Reach PLC. So the Gazette, if you like, it's a sister paper of the Chronicle. And so we'd always kind of been closely connected because we were kind of the Northeast teams, if you like. You know, they were the Northeast sports writers, and yeah, it was there was various bits of kind of like reshuffling and things going on last year mainly because of the pandemic, and the company obviously wanting to kind of reshuffle and rethink how they did things. I was actually one of the fortunate ones in that my job covering Sunderland wasn't actually at risk. There were other jobs that throughout the company that were at risk, but I could have quite comfortably continued covering Sunderland in the capacity that I did at that time. But he's lost his bottle. That's his issue. But yeah, sorry. So yeah, I could have quite comfortable, but this opportunity just came up. Obviously, it was announced that that after many years of covering the Borough for the Gazette, Phil and Phil and Anthony Vickers were both moving on and leaving the company, and for me that just presented itself with a massive opportunity, because I saw that as, you know, I was kind of, if you like, second man covering Sunderland. I was there was someone ahead of me in the pecking order, if you like, whereas coming to the Gazette presented presented an opportunity to come and cover a team, as essentially the first man and as the main reporter, and that appealed. And also just because so much of my family are Teessiders as well, it just struck something with me that it was right to go for that. I mean, my grandma still reads the Gazette every day. A lot of my family are Boro fans. My dad's from Boosmet, my mum's from Saltburn. And so it just felt right to me to kind of come and try for that job. And fortunately, after being interviewed, I was the one that they selected to take it on. So obviously I knew it was going to be a challenge, and there was going to need to be some convincing, because I can't get away from the fact that I have this awful Mackem accent, and I was born and bred in Sunderland. There's no getting away from that. But no, I mean, I think for me, I wouldn't have ever come and taken this job. Like, I wouldn't have even applied for the job if there was anything like that kind of, I know there's a bit of needle sometimes between Sunderland and Middlesbrough, but if there were any feelings like that for me, the kind of the detail with which you have to cover a club as a regional reporter, I couldn't have done that, because you're watching Middlesbrough week in, week out, every game.
Yeah.
If there was any kind of feelings like that to me, I simply wouldn't have taken the job, because I couldn't have done that job justice. But for me, because I'm a Man United fan, I'm not a Sunderland fan, because so much of my family are Teessiders, and many of them are Middlesbrough fans. Middlesbrough have always been a club that I've kind of looked out for anyway. And yes, as I say, coming and writing for the Gazette was quite special for me, because so many of my family read that newspaper regularly. My grandma still does every day. So, that still means a lot. I know now, our industry has moved very much digitally, and it's all online and everything, but you still get a buzz. For me personally, and I know I've spoken to my colleague Dom Shaw about this as well, and he's exactly the same. You still get a buzz about seeing your name in the paper, your byline and your back page, whatever it might be. Like, there's still a buzz to that for many of us. And seeing that first one in the Gazette and things like that, and I remember my grandma ringing my dad and saying, "Guys, all over the Gazette today, his name's everywhere in it," and that was just amazing to me. My grandma kind of like her paper, and there my name was in the paper and everything that she's read since I was a little boy. So it's pretty special for me, that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's absolutely amazing. And now, you're all over the OurMFC channel as well. So that's there's a little.
That's it,
yeah. But no, what I was gonna say was, like when you were touching on about, obviously, you are from Sunderland. Well, you've got a strong Sunderland accent, but you don't actually support Sunderland. You support Man United. And I remember, when it was first announced that you were joining the Gazette, all the tweets and things like that, and there was like loads of question marks over like someone from Sunderland doing reports and things on Boro. So like, what was your reaction to all of that when it first kind of happened? Because like I said, there was loads of question marks and people were like, what's going on? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I think it was expected, because I knew, like as I say, because we were connected to the Gazette Peter Vic anyway, and both of them, I think Vic worked for the Gazette for as long as I'd been born. I'm sure you probably won't appreciate me telling you that, but no, like both of them were such brilliant reporters and had covered Boro for the Gazette for so long. They were almost like part of the fabric, if you like. They were an institute in their own right, and so naturally, just anybody coming in to replace either of those two, or I don't really like to say replace. That sounds like a big picked ahead, you know what I mean? But like, coming in as they're leaving is probably a better way of describing that. And it was always going to be tricky anyway. But then to kind of pick somebody who is from Sunderland and does have a strong Mackem accent was always going to raise more questions, because as I mentioned earlier, there is that bit of needle between the two clubs. So it was expected, but I was actually pleasantly surprised more than anything that it wasn't, I guess, more volatile probably is too strong a word, but it wasn't as bad as I expected, really. I think the majority of people were willing to kind of give us a try and willing to see what I was about and things like that. I presume it probably helped. I did want to make clear from the start that I had family from Teesside, and basically all of my family are Teessiders. My mum and dad are, and it's purely just because my mum did our NHS training in Sunderland, and her and my dad ended up settling in Sunderland before I was born. That's the only reason I'm a Sunderland lad, and I'm Sunderland born and bred. But in another life, I could have quite easily been a Teessider myself. If my mum hadn't gone to Sunderland to do our nursing training. So yeah, I think I wanted to make that clear that there were connections, and I wasn't just some nobody coming to Teesside with kind of no knowledge and no background or anything like that. There was a connection there, and there was a reason why I did want to apply for that job and come and cover the borough. As I say, the detail and level with which a regional reporter does cover any club. I don't think you can do that if there isn't kind of some passion for it there, or there isn't the ability to kind of develop that passion. I mean, I would never see it. I would never ever expect, even if I do this job for 20 years, I wouldn't insult supporters by pretending that my passion for the club would be anywhere close to a supporter's passion, because the passion of a supporter is so different. But nevertheless, I sit here kind of with you now, desperate for Middlesbrough to do well. I want to see Middlesbrough do well, I think in terms of doing well, just as much as a supporter. Me passion for the club might not be the same as a supporter, but my desire to see the club do well is absolutely the same.
Yeah, definitely, and I think you can see that in the articles that you write as well. I've read plenty of articles that you've written, and shared bits and pieces where we could, and it kind of shows in your style of writing as well. The way that you talk about the club. Obviously, like you say, it's not always going to be on the same level as someone that's like an actual supporter, but you show that same level, and it, like you said, it shows in your writing.
Cheers.
But
can I just pop in? I'm just a passenger at the moment.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
Yeah. So bringing it back to something you said at the start, you said that you're a United fan, and you remember the class of '92, and I mean I'm a bit too young for that. I was born in 2003, so a bit late. But sorry about that.
The treble hit.
No, I just wondered what's your earliest football memory? Is it David Beckham with that mohawk like you said, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's really weird because I remember kind of getting into football. I remember Eric Cantona kind of being, as I mentioned it before, if someone was to ask me who's your kind of all-time favourite player, Eric Cantona would probably be who I'd say, because he's kind of one I remember from a very early age kind of being like wow, and that being the wow factor that got me into football. But it's strange because one of my earliest memories of football, I remember the 98 World Cup. I always remember that for some reason. But then in terms of Manchester United, it was just before that, Arsenal had won the league. It was Arsene Wenger's first league title, and I always remember me and my dad were watching Arsenal Man United, and it was quite a pivotal game in the title race. And I always remember Mark Overmars scored a late goal, kind of slotted it low past Peter Schmeichel. I'm pretty sure it was quite late on in the game, and Arsenal won the game either 2-1 or 1-0. I think it was 1-0. And that kind of swayed the title race in their favour. And as I say, it ended up being Arsene Wenger's first league title with Arsenal, and so for all that, I mean, absolutely, I've got this take that I'm a Glory supporter. Anybody wants to call me that, they're absolutely right, because it was the glory of Man United that got me into them as a kid. But yeah, weirdly, one of my earliest football memories is losing the league title that season, and that Mark Overmars goal that kind of swayed the title in Arsenal's favour. So yeah, that's
No, it's super. It's interesting, like, because I know if we talk about memories and things, our first real memories, I was too young to experience Juninho, Ravanelli, Emerson, but I remember when I think I was only about 5-6 years old. I remember my granddad actually had like videotapes of I think it was that 95, 96, 97 season. And it was the full season, obviously, getting the cup finals and still getting relegated. And I think my earliest memory was actually seeing them on the videotape. And I'm talking like the telly's literally like this wide. That's just the back of the telly, and you slot in at the bottom, and obviously it loads up and things. And I think that's probably my earliest memory of watching football. Like I said, the likes of Ravanelli and stuff got me really, really into. I mean, I've supported Boro all my life, and I went to the games when I was young. But that was my really first taste of football. Yeah. So going back to obviously talking about the Gazette and things, then what I know a lot of people wanted to know, what's it kind of like on a day-to-day basis? Like, have you got like a routine, or is it how do you kind of go about starting a day at work?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, because since I've came in, we've obviously been remote working, we've been home working.
Oh God, yeah.
The pandemic. So a normal day for me. Dom normally tends to log on early. Dom's a really early bird. He gets up most mornings to go for a run, which I never understand. But yeah, so he tends to log on maybe 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, Dom, because he does like to get up early, and so I'll tend to log on about 10 o'clock, and that just means that I'm on kind of a bit later on the night in case anything were to happen later on. And so a typical morning, I'll log on, I'll kind of me and Dom will have a quick catch up about what's been happening and what's going to happen, because Dom goes into what's called the morning conference at 11 o'clock on a morning, which is where all the departments of the Gazette, news, business, blah blah, come together and kind of discuss what's to come that day. So obviously the deal will tend to start with me and Dom kind of having a conversation about what we're gonna do that day and what's to come, and then it's generally just a kind of if you like, a free hit. Like Dom's really good at what I've really liked about working with Dom is he encourages kind of your creativity and your own ideas and things like that, and he he encourages and likes kind of longer reads, which are not always preferred these days. It's certainly online. But yeah, and I mean, of course, always keeping an eye. You keeping an eye all day on social media, and also news now is a big thing where you kind of looking making sure there's nothing coming through the news things, and then it'll depend really then from there what's happening on a day-to-day basis. It might be a press conference day, so you've got your press conference that's coming around. If it's not a press conference day, then it'll just be a case of working through your ideas and the things that you've got on that day, the things that you're going to do, because ultimately you look at there's no kind of targets or anything in terms of how much you publish a day, but you want to try and keep the website regularly populated. One thing we do see, because we can kind of see live figures of the website. So if you do go a kind of a longer period without publishing anything, we tend to see a lot of people are on just the Middlesbrough homepage. And what that is essentially telling us is that people are probably there waiting for something.
Waiting for something.
Exactly, yeah. So you want to try and keep the website populated with things if you can. So day to day would just be kind of making sure you're doing everything, keeping on top of social media, and keeping things regularly updated on there. And as I say, there might be days where you perhaps need to take a bit of time out to do an interview or things like that. And Dom's really good with that in terms of if you need the time to kind of have an hour or two where you just go away kind of thing and work on something, then you need to do that. But yeah, it's one thing I love about this job is that it is hard to kind of give a day-to-day on what a day-to-day is, because every day is so different. Some days you don't know, what's going to happen. Other days you come in and okay, Boro are going to announce this, and we know they're going to announce this at this point. And you're kind of working towards that. Other days, you might not know anything's coming, but something might come that is unexpected and things like that. So, one thing I love about this job is it can be so unexpected, and you sometimes don't know what's going to come day to day.
No, I 100% agree. I think it's the variation, isn't it? It's all the different things, and I remember when I first started doing this, it was kind of like I remember when I was, I think it was like 13, 14, I started posting latest Boro, transfer news on my own Instagram.
Yeah.
It's only since I like learned about marketing and did my apprenticeship and things like that, that I thought I'd always wanted to do it, and then I thought, you know what, why not? Like, let's just do it. But like you say, it's the variation, it's the different articles that Ben's creating, or Chloe, or Tony, and you know what I mean. And like you said, it's different every single day. Or you see something pop up on social media, and it's like, oh God, we've signed so and so, or do you know what I mean? That Warnock said this or that, and yeah, it is. It's the variation, isn't it? It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So then, obviously, knowing that you worked previously at like covering Sunderland, Newcastle, was there any difference, would you say, going from there to here, like in your day to day or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with Newcastle, I only covered kind of maybe the first year or so at the Chronicle, and it was kind of like doing a bit of both, just whenever there was kind of digital stuff. So I didn't really ever cover Newcastle, what I would say, kind of stringently or anything like that. Newcastle I was just kind of there covering like daily life blogs and things like that. I was never really writing about Newcastle as such. But in terms of Sunderland, I think definitely there's difference in the day to day, because as I say, the major difference in the role that I'm in now compared to the one I was covering Sunderland is that I'm kind of like, there is me and Dom. Dom's classed as the Middlesbrough editor, but he does a lot of writing still, and then I'm the Middlesbrough writer, which is the official job titles we have. At Sunderland, I was kind of, what if you like, the second Sunderland man, because we had James Hunter, who was ahead of me, who's covered Sunderland for 20 odd years for the Chronicle, and so he was always deemed as the main guy, if you like. And so at Sunderland, a general day would be kind of almost, kind of picking up things that maybe James wasn't picking up, if because he'd have the main things to do, if you like. When there was other things, that would be then when I'd pick those up. And whereas with Middlesbrough, it's more of a case of I'm on the main things, and I'm kind of, if there's any signs, I'm looking at that. I'm getting in touch with sources and kind of trying to contact the club to see if anything's happening and things like that. Whereas that wouldn't have necessarily been a part of me Sunderland role, because James would have been doing that kind of thing. And so I think that's the big difference in the two roles, is that now I've kind of stepped up. It's kind of my responsibility. Well, with the Sunderland role, there was still, if you learned anything, if any sources told you anything, it wasn't a case of, oh well, that's James's job, you don't do it. But it was generally James's responsibility to go after the kind of big breaking news like that. That's what he thinks of that.
He's telling us more. He's telling us inside information. Any transfer news, little one?
If it's 16 or 17 years, mate, you'll be up there banging them in for the Boro, won't you? Yeah.
Of course we will. We need it. To be fair, we do need a striker, don't we, Ben?
Amen.
Exactly.
Let's hope he's a better player than his dad, anyway.
So obviously you've been here for a year now. So I just wondered if you have, like a favourite moment from last season.
That's tough. I think there were a lot of good moments during the season. I think Josh Coburn's goal against Sheffield Wednesday stands out, just because it's always great to see a local lad come on, from the academy and score a goal, which actually was an important. Well, I see an important goal. Obviously, the season had kind of fizzled out by then, but still, Boro won the game. Yeah. A shame that no fans were there to see it. That was the big thing. I think had fans been in the ground, it was a special moment anyway, but had fans been there, and Coburn we'd obviously been talking about him for a few weeks, and he'd been there for, I think, about 6 or 7, training with the first team, and then he finally gets on, and it almost goes in slow motion as Cabano puts the ball in the box. It wasn't a kind of a whipped cross, if you like. It was kind of in the air for a while, and the way Coburn kind of held off the defender and then nodded it, and he nodded it across goal and bouncing it into the ground, and it was almost slow motion as it bounces off the post and then goes in. I mean, that's it, and then he wheels away in celebration, and that's a special moment, but one where you can imagine that kind of like, there's with fans when you get a goal, and there's almost that kind of like second of kind of like
That's
and
honestly
everything goes silent.
literally what I was about to say.
Yeah, and then you get that eruption, and I think you
Yeah, and
would have
there's a
got that as
massive
it left his
roar.
head, and the massive roar as it hit the post and went in. Like that would have been incredible had fans been there. It's such a shame that many moments like that, but that one stands out in particular as one where it's such a shame fans weren't there for it. So, but because of that, I think if I was to pick a standout moment, I think very early on in the season, obviously, was the only game last season that there were any fans in for a Borough game, and I was fortunate enough to cover that, the Bournemouth game, and when Marcus Brown scored that late equaliser, obviously Bournemouth's season went as it did, but at that time it was the second game of the season. They'd just come down from the Premier League. They were expected to be challenging for promotion last season, and Marcus Brown scoring that late equaliser, I think it was, I don't think I'm wrong in saying 1,000 fans that day, was it?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, 1,000 fans.
1,000, and just hearing the noise that 1,000 could even make. That was actually my first home game. I'd covered the Watford game, the first game of the season, but down at Watford. But because I was covering Sunderland when the pandemic hit, I didn't have a kind of behind closed doors experience, because Sunderland's league campaign was completely curtailed and just ended. Whereas, of course, Borough had the suspension, then went back to it, and I didn't come in until the start of this season. So I had the Watford game, which was my first experience of behind closed doors. Then went straight into the Bournemouth game where it was 1,000 fans, and just obviously because I'm a Man United, all of Man United's behind closed doors games and many of the other games during the lockdown, because obviously you just wanted to watch football at that time. But to then kind of hear the noise that 1,000 fans made when Marcus Brown scored that late equaliser, I think that has to go as a high point of kind of highlight of the season for me personally.
Yeah, I think the fact it was Marcus Brown as well added to that, because obviously he'd had troubles in his first season, and then to have that moment, for me, I thought that would be his breakthrough, and then obviously I think it was the FA Cup against Bournemouth, and he goes and just ruins his name. That's one of the down points of the season, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. I remember that, because obviously the game before that he'd done so well against Wickham, hadn't he? He'd been absolutely fantastic in that match down at Adams Park, and obviously Warnock had been talking him up as he'd been coming back from his injury, and then as you see, I remember obviously getting Brentford behind. That's been one of the unique things about the season, being behind closed doors, is how much you hear. Kind of on the pitch and from the dugout that you wouldn't necessarily normally hear. But that's kind of one of the downsides as you see it. I remember that Brentford game in the FA Cup again. I was there at that one, and Brentford's new stadium's absolutely lovely and dead enclosed and kind of echoey around the stadium. And
I know, can you imagine that in the next year?
Yeah. It's a lovely ground. I'm happy for them. I've got a friend who's a Brentford season ticket holder, so I'm really happy they've gone up for him. But I'm kind of sad that they have, because it in the cup I won't get to go next season, because that is a really, really lovely stadium. And Mummy's just back, so the bank can be just because of obviously being behind closed doors, I remember the minute that challenge happened, and the kind of scream in agony from Marcus Brown at that time, and you just knew instantly that something wasn't right, just through the way he kind of yelped, if you like, and it was a really sad moment, because as you see, he was just coming back. He'd been brilliant against Wickham, and I remember writing before the season started that could it was one of the first articles I wrote for the Gazette. Could Marcus Brown kind of be Neil Warnock's secret weapon this season? Obviously coming back from loan from Oxford, because I'd been covering Sunderland in League One and Oxford for the past two seasons. Had been kind of a promotion rival with Sunderland, a playoff rival for Sunderland. Marcus Brown was kind of a player on my radar anyway, because I could say for Oxford how talented he was. So he was one player, I think, as I was coming in to cover the Borough. There was Paddy McNair, because I'd covered Paddy McNair with Sunderland as well, and I knew it hadn't been going as well for Paddy at Middlesbrough in the 2 seasons prior to last. I was intrigued to watch him and see why it hadn't been working, which obviously proved futile, because he's been absolutely brilliant this past season. But he's been the Paddy McNair that I remembered. And then there was, as I say, there was also Marcus Brown, because I knew what he was capable of from watching him when I'd watched Oxford the previous 2 seasons. I think he had 2 half-season loan spells at Oxford, didn't he? And he was brilliant in both. So I was really intrigued to see what he could have done for Middlesbrough. And such a shame that he did kind of obviously get the early injury, come back and got the Brentford injury. So fingers crossed here, because I think Warnock's really, really high on him now, having been unsure last summer. Fingers crossed. I think he's due back from injury roughly around October time. So fingers crossed he'll finally go on to realise his potential for the club.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he has spoke about him, hasn't he, quite openly, and said that he's never met a player that's, you know, fought so hard to prove his worth in the side and prove that, you know, we all know there's a player in there. You know, I remember when Woodgate actually signed him, and, you know, doing a bit, because I'll be honest, I hadn't really heard much of him. I knew bits and pieces, but then doing research and stuff, watching some of his games, and then, like I say, when he was at Oxford, he was like untouchable. So, you know, we all know there's a player in there. It's just been really frustrating. And to be fair, I didn't actually think of it when you were talking about obviously being in the stadium and stuff. Obviously, you will have heard that, and it'll have been really loud, like that yelp, compared to there being no fans in the stadium as well. But yeah, it's really frustrating for him. But, you know, hopefully he can properly kick on next season.
Yeah, fingers crossed, definitely. Like you say, there's definitely a player there, 100%. There's genuine quality there, and I think he's the type of player Warnock will want in his team next season, because he can make things happen in the position that he plays. He almost wants, you know, a couple of wide men playing off the striker, the main striker, which he'll hopefully get, and they're going to be the 2 players ultimately who make things happen, and who he wants to kind of, you know, be the danger man, if you like. And I think, as he proved against Wickham at Adams Park, he can absolutely be that man.
Yeah. And there's an opening in the team, isn't there, with the fact that, you know, Cabano's. I'd be very surprised if Cabano came back. The last season, I mean, there was a rumour going around that he was, but I think that was proved fake. So, yeah, you know, there's an opening there. Mendes Lang, obviously, he's gone as well. So, I mean, you could play Tav out there. Yeah, you know, there's definitely an opening there for Brown next season. So, hopefully, you know, if he stays fit, I think we could see him come to the fore.
Yeah, absolutely. Be interesting to see how Warnock recruits in that department. I mean, it's no secret that he will want to recruit in that department. Strikers are obviously the priority, and he wants 3 strikers, he said, but he does also want wide men, and I think he's kind of looking next season, and he's mentioned, he's kind of spoken to us a few times now about kind of formations next season, and whether it's with 3 at the back or 4 at the back, he kind of seems to favour 3 forwards. Yeah. It's going to be like a kind of main focal point striker, a kind of target man striker with 2 wide forwards off them. So there might not be traditional wingers per se, but more wide forwards. And he'll want them to kind of be a bit closer to the striker. 4-3-3 or 3-4-3 is something that he's kind of spoken about with us a few times in wanting. So I think they are obviously key areas to also recruit in, and it'll be interesting to kind of see who they end up with.
I think that's exciting, to be fair, though. I mean, like, I think, well, me and Ben spoke about it, like, plenty of times when we were doing, like, match reaction videos and things like that. And one of the most frustrating things was, like, how isolated our strikers were at times. So if you can have them 3 up top, and that's why, as well, I think Akpom was, like, he didn't do as well as we thought he was going to do last season, because he was so isolated, and obviously we didn't play to his strengths. So if you can have that kind of focal point as a striker, and then have 2 that are going to, like, link up with him, you know, play it to Fee, or then you lay it back to someone like Sav or Tav, and then kind of peel off the striker. Do you know what I mean? Or they can make runs and cut inside, and there's loads of options, I think, when you play a formation like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting you mentioned Akpom, and you're absolutely right that they didn't really play it with style, but I think that, you know, there is also a criticism to be had of Akpom, and particularly as the season went on, in terms of how much he offered to the team. And it wasn't his style. That is fair to say. But by the end of the season, Duncan Watmore was being preferred in that position, and obviously again, Duncan's someone I know very well from Sunderland, and he's by no means the kind of ideal striker that Neil Warnock wants in that position. He wants, as we see it, the target man. That's what the Wales players need. Essentially, he needs that. I'm watching the Wales game just in the background here, and they've obviously got Kiefer Moore up front for them at the minute. Who did want, who would have been Warnock striker last season had he got his own way, and you know that's kind of what. He's got Kiefer Moore there as the big target man striker, and then he's got the likes of Ramsey, Beale, and Daniel James from Man United kind of running off him and getting down the wings and getting the balls into the box room and things like that. That's what he wants. I think Akpom's future at Boro is going to be an interesting one, because I think there is potentially interest in him, and it wouldn't surprise me if they get a decent enough offer that if they did agree to sell him.
Yeah.
But if he does stay, I could see Akpom being more of one of the wide forwards in the three, or might be times where he plays a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2, whichever way you classify it defensively. But going with the two strikers, that might then suit him more if he's playing off a big target man, because clearly he isn't a back to goal striker, which is what Warnock wants, as that main central striker. I think Akpom might get an opportunity if he stays at the club as one of the kind of two off the main striker, but he is going to, without doubt, have to put in more work. I think one of the big things with where it started going wrong more for Akpom as the season went on is that he visibly didn't look as interested. He wasn't working as hard, which is unforgivable. In Warnock's eyes, the team might not play at your strengths, it might not be going your way, but in Warnock's eyes, you work and you work and you work, and something might come off for you. And that's what he got from Duncan Watmore. Duncan Watmore wasn't particularly suited to the role that he was playing, but he never gave up, and he ran his heart out for the team. He pressed every defender. And I'm trying to think who the goal was against, but there was that goal that came out of nothing that Watmore scored, where
he cuts in from the right hand side, doesn't he?
That's right. That was his brilliant goal, wasn't it? He's superb.
Were you talking about the one where
he
plays it in?
I think, Balassi played it into his feet. He has his back to goal, and he kind of just turned and just hit it with his left. Was it Bournemouth? Was it? Yeah,
Bournemouth away, wasn't it? Yeah.
Played it across the face of the goal with his left foot, and it goes into the post, and that's the kind of thing that even though the system tactically maybe and the style of play didn't necessarily suit Duncan Watmore as a central striker, he was willing to work hard and make something happen out of nothing. And I don't think Akpom did that enough last season. So why you could argue that you need to play to his strengths after you've paid what was 3 or 4 million that they paid for him. I think also he needed to show more himself to prove that he deserved to be in the team ultimately.
Yeah, I think that well, that's all. Especially Middlesbrough. I think the fans of this club, that's all we ask for. Do you know what I mean? You play for the team, and you play for the fans, the club, the area. Do you know what I mean? I think that's why we take to players like Sam Morsey, Johnny Howson, Duncan Watmore, these players that. I mean, look at Grant Ledbetter, goes down as pretty much a club legend in his time here, because it's just one of them players that you might write off initially, but they'll work hard, they'll give you everything on the pitch, won't they? Do you know what I mean? And that's all that you can ask for. And I think if Akpom was to stay next season, I would, because personally, I'd like to see us give him one more season to maybe, potentially prove himself, or even half a season, and then maybe look to ship him off in January or something like that. But just so he can, because I do think there's a player in there as well. But I think if he could just show Warnock that little bit more, and prove that he can, he's got it in him. I think he could potentially do well, like you mentioned, in that 3. So you've got Watmore, Akpom, maybe someone like that, Michael Smith. Or if we were to bring in someone like Junior Hoylett as well, and just kind of rotate them either side, I think that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that's kind of if Akpom does steer, that's kind of the plan. I think, as I say, a big thing for Akpom now is going to be the start of pre-season and how he returns. You know, he's got to return in the right frame of mind, similar to Marcus Brown actually last summer. Of course, Warnock spoken about how he wasn't sure about Marcus Brown. He didn't really like his attitude, thought he had an attitude problem, and he spoke to him about it. And Marcus Brown obviously then knuckled down, said, I'm going to prove you wrong, and I am, you know, right for this football club, etc. And Akpom almost needs to return to Middlesbrough for pre-season with a similar kind of attitude of you know, I want to be a success at this football club, and I'm going to work hard to kind of prove that I should be at this football club. It sticks in my head. I can't remember now what it might have been. The game. I'm terrible with memory in terms of a lot of games just roll into one by the end of it.
Man, I don't remember yesterday.
Yeah, but it might have been the game where Britta Sambalonga came on, and it was his last game, and of course after that he and I think that was QPR, wasn't it? And he and Ashley Fletcher were kind of sent away after that game, and quite possibly was that game. It might not have been that one. I could be wrong. But Akpom was substituted. He substituted. And he kind of, as he was substituted, just kind of strolled off, looked a bit angry to be taken off, looked pissed off. And he was just like, you know, down and just, you know, it wasn't the attitude that you wanted. That kind of summed it up for me, that, you know, he was being brought off and someone was being put on for what Warnock believed was the good of the team, and at the time I think they were maybe behind or level and kind of chasing a goal, and he's kind of sauntering off like there's no time in the world, and it's not kind of the attitude that you want kind of displayed on the pitch or in public. There might be times behind the scenes where we never see it, where, you know, players who don't play much kind of not on the manager's door, or, you know, players who aren't happy with the way the team's playing because it doesn't suit them, not on the manager's door, and you have those kind of conversations, and you kind of relay those complaints in private away from the public eye. You know, don't do it on the pitch. Don't you know, walk off with an attitude kind of thing because you've been subbed off. That shouldn't ever come into the public sphere, if you like. And you know, I think that summed it up for me. And where Akpom's got to change if he wants to be a success at Middlesbrough is he's kind of, you know, got to knuckle down and prove he deserves to be at Middlesbrough.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, because, I mean, what was I going to say? That game, I think it was 1-0, wasn't it, Ben? And that's when their keeper came out. And it was got the red card. Joe Lumley, new signing Joe Lumley, he came on and had an absolute blinder. But like you say, you're chasing the game, and, you know, you want, if you're getting subbed off, right, you know, just accept it. Maybe you haven't had the best of games. Run yourself off, and, you know, let the next lad come on, who obviously Warnock thinks is going to make more of an impact and change the game. So I definitely agree with you there. I think that definitely needs to change, and hopefully, when you're touching on Marcus Brown as well, you know, hopefully you can turn a couple of them into, you know, an Abel, like a Tarat story. Yeah, that'd be nice. Hopefully do the same. Just have an absolute worldy season, and send us up next year.
Hopefully that's more than one good season.
What were you saying, sorry?
Hopefully that's more than one good season, though.
Yeah, fingers crossed there.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think the slight difference between his kind of QPR promotion winning team and his Cardiff promotion winning team is Cardiff had to do it more as a team, and I think that's probably going to be more of the model that we see at Middlesbrough. When you look at Cardiff's team, the goals were kind of spread so evenly around, and you had, I think there was maybe 4 or 5 players, including Mendes Lang, who got 7 or more goals in the season, but nobody got 20. They kind of spread the goals evenly around the team. The centre-back Morrison, I think he ended up with about 6 or 7 as well. And, you know, fingers crossed Dale Fryer, Grant Hall can do that for Boro next season. Whereas I think with QPR, I think Warnock recognised early that he had a gem in Tarat. And I remember there was a player being interviewed. I can't remember, it was one of the QPR players. And Warnock spoken about it himself as well, in terms of how, you know, he kind of brought Tarat in. I think, did he make him captain? Possibly made him captain, but certainly there was a bit of unrest within the rest of the
rooms, wasn't there? Yeah,
because Tarat was kind of in and around and everything. I think there was a bit of unrest, and he kind of, Warnock had called in kind of 5 or 6 of his main QPR players and just said, like, look, trust me on this one. This guy's going to win us the title. And essentially the tactics were just, get the ball to Tarat in a dangerous position and let him do what he does. And that was the kind of difference between QPR and Cardiff under Warnock, is that they had that gem in Tarat, whereas Cardiff didn't really have one individual with that much excellence. And I think Middlesbrough probably, I expect, be more like Cardiff than QPR, because I don't think they currently have a Tarat, and I don't think they'll be able to recruit a Tarat either. Fortunately for the kind of Cardiff model like Boro next season, in terms of everybody chipping in and having this kind of, such a strong togetherness and a strong core and a strong spine that, they make themselves so difficult to beat, and also have the players who can go and, have plenty of players who kind of chip in and do the bit to pick up enough points as the season goes on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you were touching on captaining as well, and, him giving the armband to Tarat, just thinking there, do you think he had the same kind of idea with Britt at the start of the season, or last season, sorry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 100%. I think there's been a few things kind of, where Warnock says things at the time, and it might not be the exact truth, but he's saying it for a reason. I think another one of those would be when he said Akpom was his kind of number one target and the one he always wanted. He said that at the time. It's kind of the quote that you see, but I don't think that actually was the case. Now, but he's obviously, there's been plenty of hints about kind of not recruiting from just watching videos. Things like that I think he obviously says things at the time because he's wanting to motivate players, and he's wanting to get the best out of them, etc. And that can then come back to bite him if you want to hold that kind of thing against him. But I think with Britt, that's another one where kind of you now look and you think, why did he make Britt captain? Given what Britt ultimately offered to the team. But I think when you go back to that time, there was kind of, Britt was coming into the last year of his contract. Because of the wage that he was on, there was absolutely no way that anybody was taking him off Boro's hands. I do think that were we to go back 12 months, had someone come in with a decent enough offer for Britt, I think Boro would have sold him last summer. But they just wasn't that interest, and of course they did try to offload him again in January. But nobody was willing to, because his wages at Middlesbrough were that high that Britt was just happy to kind of be there on that wage, essentially. I mean, that's not a criticism of Britt, by the way. The club gave him a contract with that much money. So, there's no criticism of him for that.
Gary Monk, if anything.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's summer under Gary Monk 2017, D&me. But yeah, so obviously I think at that time Warnock was left with a kind of scenario of, okay, we've got this player, he is capable, but he just doesn't seem to be doing it. What can I do to try and make him do it? And so I think giving him the captaincy was Warnock's way of kind of trying to, if you like, give him a kick up the backside, or just motivate him, get him going somewhere. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. It didn't happen. And of course, he eventually made the switch and gave the armband to Howson, who is probably the more suitable captain of Boro, if you like. But I think definitely giving Britt the armband, I think you're absolutely right. It was a means of trying to get something out of him, but it just unfortunately didn't work.
Just like fizzled out at the end, didn't it? And there wasn't, I think he had. Well, it was his first. I remember his first season. I think he had 15 goals. I think it was. And you were thinking, right, if you can start this level, this is exactly what we're expecting. And I think it was the price tag around Britt that a lot of people still struggle with. I mean, personally, I know he obviously on a lot of money, and that is down to Gary Monk and the wages that were offered at the time. If you're a football player, you're not going to turn them down, are you? You only have a short career as a footballer. But I think in his time at Boro, I've rated him. I really did rate him as a striker, and I didn't really see many other options in terms of like better strikers at the time. But I think this last season, it was really sad to see it kind of fizzle out like that. And I think if he was to replicate his first season that he had this season, and he gives it a right good go, and he hits, I don't know, even what Fletch hit last season, gets about 13, 14 goals, and we just miss out on the playoffs. you're thinking, thank you very much, for everything that you've done, mate.
Yeah.
We'll shake your hand and, all the best in the future. But I think it was the lack of effort that kind of came across. It might not have been the case, but that's the kind of way it came across, that it just kind of petered out and on bad terms, really.
Yeah, no, I think exactly the same as you. There was, I think the ironic thing. I mean, you mentioned about kind of if he'd have kind of done what Fletcher did the season before and kind of maybe got about 13, 14, 12, whatever around that mark of goal, it might have made a huge difference to Boro's season as well. Because I wrote it a couple of times during the season, although he didn't do it often enough. In just before Christmas, the last game for Christmas, for the 1-4-1, didn't there, at St Andrews? Lewis scored the 2 goals
untouchable
from the corner. And Britt was brilliant that day. That was probably his best performance of the season. And apart from Ashley Fletcher, who obviously was spent the majority of the season injured, between he and Akpom, I think Britt was the better of the two at playing with his back to goal. It's still not his natural game. It's still not what he's best at doing, but he was capable of being strong enough to kind of hold off a defender, play with his back to goal, and then link up play. I always hark back to the second goal against Nottingham Forest at the Riverside. That one, to me, summed up the kind of quick transition counter that wants Middlesbrough to play, and that was Dale Fry kind of clearing it from his own touchline up to Britt, who was kind of just inside Boro's half. He held off his defender, one touch, laid it into Tavernier's feet, and Tavernier played this lovely through ball, and George Saville was in on goal. And I was heartened with that, because it's that quick transition counter that I think is when Boro are at the best under Warnock. And that from Dale Fry clearing the ball on his own touchline to George Saville finishing at the very other end, it was 10 seconds. That's all it took. And people talk about kind of Warnock's direct football, if you like, but that would be perhaps perceived as direct because Dale Fry went from his own touchline to the halfway line to hit Britt, and it was only 10 seconds. There was no Manchester City style kind of patient passing the ball and kind of having loads of possession. It was 10 seconds, 3 passes. George Saville was finishing the ball, and that was ruthlessly taking apart a team who, because it was so quick, they were so out of sorts because they were still essentially on their own attack. And that was where I think, had Britt put in more effort, had Britt shown more desire throughout the season, he could have been the main man and could have done that for Boro more often. But as you say, I completely agree. It just didn't seem to be there for him last season. He could very well go on this season, coming up, go to a new club who does play to a kind of style that would suit him more, and he could go back to being a 15 to 20 goal a season striker. There's no denying that at times during his time at Boro, there's been styles of football played that maybe don't suit him. But again, I go back to the same as what I said with Akpom. It doesn't matter if you're a good striker, if you're a good player, you play to that team style, because I don't think either are good enough players where the team should necessarily abandon its own style, abandon the whole way it wants to accommodate that particular player. I think each individual should be working hard to play in the way that the team wants to play.
Yeah, and I think we've lost a bit of identity, really, haven't we? We don't really. Do you know what I mean? We currently. I remember Johnny Bullock from Borough Breakdown writing a brilliant article on why we're constantly in a transition period. Do you know what I mean? Going from one manager to the other. And it's because we're bringing in different managers with different playing styles, and then the last 2 years at the club, and then you transitioning again to a different style of player, but then you've got this set of players that fitted that manager, and this set, do you know what I mean? And it's that's exactly what it is, and what he said was spot on. And to be fair, knowing our luck, Britt will probably go to Rangers, play in the Europa League, and smash it up.
Yeah, but that might be the case, and he might be a good fit for Rangers, and that's fair enough. But I think it shouldn't ever, lose sight of the fact that it wouldn't have changed. He wouldn't have, if he'd stayed at Middlesbrough and he was still at Middlesbrough playing next season, he wouldn't be doing what he was doing at Rangers.
Yeah,
exactly. He wouldn't be doing that at Borough. So, I think good luck to him. whatever he goes and does in his future, that's fine. Good luck to him. But yeah, the focus has now got to be on Boro recruiting the right strikers that they need to play the way kind of Warnock wants to play, and to get it going, because essentially I think because of Warnock's age, Boro have one chance now.
Yeah, definitely.
To kind of and we know Warnock is. I know I get what you're saying in terms of an identity and in terms of kind of having a long-term plan. It's definitely something that I think most clubs needed, but most clubs need now, particularly the way the climate is and the finances and the way things are going. I think if you look at a club like Brentford, are very well run in terms of knowing, that their identity and recruiting for their identity, etc. But with Boro, they've got a veteran manager in Warnock who knows how to get teams promoted. Nobody's done it in the AFL more than him, and they've essentially got one chance now this summer. So getting the players he wants. He's not going to recruit bad players. Let's put it like that. The players that he recruits are going to be players who can play under any manager at this level. So get him the players that he wants, and let's have a real good go at this, because I think. If Warnock gets the players he wants, I think we could be looking at a really, really good season, a really exciting season.
Yeah, definitely. It is, and oh my word, the kit as well. Like to go up in that kit as well, like that would do it for me. That's a bit of me that.
It's very nice. It's very, very nice. Look, when I first saw it with the pictures and everything, I could kind of understand why some people might not be as keen on it with the kind of silhouette of the transporter and everything. I personally like that. I think it's a lovely touch.
It, yeah.
You see so many. I tweeted at the time about it. You see so many kind of, the likes of Adidas, etc. They have maybe the kind of 6 main teams who they create a kit for. It's their kit. And then every other team who has the kits made by Adidas just wear their colours transform that kit. It's just a template that has no kind of identity or soul for the team that it's actually made for, other than the main 6 teams. Whereas Hummel have created this kit for Boro, and it's full of soul, full of Teesside. I think it's, and then having seen people buy it the day, obviously the club tweeting out a lot as it's gone on sale today with people holding the shirt. I think actually, in the pictures where it's actually been worn by people, I think it looks even better, because I think perhaps the Teesside's the transporter bridge silhouette is perhaps a bit more subtle than it looked in the initial kind of pictures. I love that kit, mate. I think it's really sport, and I love that it's got that kind of paying homage to Teesside.
Yeah, it's definitely got like promotion written all over it.
If they do go this season, it's going to be one of them iconic kits.
If we go up, we'll look back on this exact interview right now, and we'll go like we called it. You know what I mean? The look of the kit. That's what we'll say.
Years time.
Yeah, exactly. But we're running a bit low on time now. So what I was thinking is, should we do like a quick fire with some of the questions that some of the fans had sent in?
Yeah, go for it. I realise I waffle a lot, so I apologise for me.
Sorry, buddy. It's all right.
Quick fire. I'll try and be as quick as possible.
It's better like this though, anyway, because it's more raw. If you know what I mean, it's organic. I don't want it to be like question answer question. Do you know what I mean? It's more relaxed. It's just more of a conversation about the club. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely.
It's better like this, definitely. But right, we'll start off with, because some of them that we asked we've already actually gone through anyway. So first one comes from Chris Woods on Twitter, and he says, "What's your relationship with Warnock like?"
Yeah, it's really good. It's been one of the highlights of kind of covering the club this season has been working with Neil Warnock. He's very old-fashioned in terms of the value he places on kind of the journalists, and particularly regional journalists. I think everyone was well aware that at the end of the season he invited ourselves, Scott from the Northern Echo, Joe from the Hartlepool Mail, and Mark from BBC Tees, along with myself and Dom from the Gazette. He invited us to Rockcliffe, and it was just an informal chat. I mean, you got to remember that he's used to kind of being in press conferences every week and saying, we do at matches, at most matches we see him face to face, but it's a new experience for him in 40 plus years management, where the majority of his kind of interactions with us have been like this, over a computer screen, over Zoom, and that's kind of not the way he operates. And but he's excellent. He's really helpful, and he, as I say, does value the regional newspapers. So he's willing to kind of have you kind of come in and kind of chat near and stuff like that, and do informal stuff. He'll happily pick the phone up here if you kind of need a bit of, you want to chat to him about something or what have you. He'll happily pick the phone up, and not many now do that, to be honest. In the modern game, as I say, he is kind of old school in that respect. And well, I just like the fact that I think there's been a few times where he's kind of like, he has little digs and things like that, but it's all kind of jokey. I think sometimes it can kind of come across as like, he's having a go at Craig again, but he does it in a completely jokey way. There's only been the once, and that was after the first Stoke game back in December, where he didn't like me match report, and he made sure I knew I didn't like them. He didn't like me match report, and that time he was genuinely annoyed at us and genuinely upset at the report I'd wrote. But honestly, like, he came in, he made his point in the press conference, and we spoke about it after privately. And honestly, he's been absolutely great. Like, and to me, he makes them jokes. A joke about me, or a joke about Joe, or a joke about Scott, and he does that because he's comfortable and he's friendly with us. It would be if he stopped making jokes and stopped having little digs that you'd worry that there was something wrong. Yeah, because that's what Warnock's like. He's like I say, not many are like that now. They're almost, in terms of when they're in front of the media and stuff, they're almost trained to be very robotic and they kind of say the cliched stuff, and that's that. Whereas Warnock's very old school. He shoots from the the hip, and he just does it his way, because he's not been media trained or anything like that. He's done it kind of on the job, if you like. He's media training, and he's really, really good to work with, and as I say, really helpful. He'll happily pick up the phone to you whenever he needs to, and press conferences are just fun, because you go in. And you think, oh God, what jokes are you going to make on me on my behalf? He keeps you on your toes. It's generally just always fun. You always know you're going to get something out of him. He's going to give you interesting lines and like I say, not just give you cliched stuff. So absolutely brilliant. I've absolutely loved working with him.
Yeah, I mean, I know me and Ben, massive fans. We'd absolutely love to eventually meet him one day. Hopefully, like I say, when he takes us up next season, we can meet him then, get a signature and stuff, and have a chat. And that'd be brilliant. But yeah, no, like I say, he seems like a lovely bloke. And I'll always remember. Well, like I say, I think one of the highlights for me has to be that video of him cycling. It's up there, isn't it? Up there.
Was it? A up.
A up, son. So what I actually did was, I've got a cup at work. I'll have to take a picture and show you, but I got him on his bike like that on the front of me cup. I got it all like made and stuff, so that's my works cup.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, he is. He's great. He's such a down to earth bloke, as I say. Like you get a lot now in the game who kind of like I say, they're very protected and they're not very they're very robotic in front of the media and things like that. But Warnock's such a down to earth bloke. He's just like me or you. You know what I mean? Like he just happens to be
just humble, really, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He just happens to be a really good football manager as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, who's had a fantastic career, but yeah, he's a smashing bloke, and I know he loves kind of interaction with fans and that as well. He's done a few kind of fan things, even like what's had to be virtually in the last kind of 12 months. But I'm sure, fingers crossed, touch wood, as the world starts to return to a bit of normality, I'm sure he will absolutely kind of relish getting out and doing more things with supporters groups and things like that, and meeting fans and what have you. And I know he absolutely can't wait to have fans back in the Riverside, because of course he missed that Bournemouth game that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Yeah,
he was in isolation, of course. So he's never actually managed the Middlesbrough at the Riverside with fans.
I know it's
So
mad when you think about it, isn't it? It's crazy, absolutely crazy. But like you say, fingers crossed we can get something sorted like that for next season. Hopefully, you know, like you say, with all this COVID stuff, it's not too far down the line. It's the kind of the home stretch now. Fingers crossed. With yeah. Right. So the next one comes in. I think you actually touched on this a little bit on Twitter, and this comes in from Jim, and he says, "Has anyone ever called you John Craig by mistake?"
Yeah. So that what I think I did. I replied on Twitter and I said it was every when we had, like, you know, your teacher was off in school and you had a sub teacher. Every sub teacher did it. So I mean, I'm old enough where registers were still paper registers when I was in school. I don't know if that's still. I would imagine it's all electronic now, but I always remember the way it worked. You would kind of have your first column on the register was surnames, and then forenames was the next one. So for example, Jones, Craig, Fry, Dale, Morsey, Sam.
Yeah.
With either Dale or Sam, but just as an example. And for some reason, sub teachers, when we had them, would come in and read the first names down the second column of the register for everybody until it got to me, and then they'd just go to the first column and call me John. And like, there'd be times where if I wasn't really paying attention or what have you, like, I wouldn't realise they were calling my name because they were calling John, and people would be like, I think she means you, or I think he means you. It used to bug me so much. It was like, why, like, for everybody you're going down the second column and reading out the first names, why when you get to my name do you feel the need to jump to column one and read out my second name? But yeah, every sort of teacher I ever got did made that same mistake.
Oh mate, I can't tell you, like, when it comes to pet peeves, one of my biggest ones is like spelling my name wrong. I know it sounds like really daft, but I'll send an email over to a client or whatever, and I'll sign off with my name, and it's got my name in my actual email address. It's like JORDAN, but I've had ONEN. I've even had IN, Jordan. Like, how does that even come about?
No YN. That's that would be the one that YN.
No, I've never had Y. Oh, someone said the other day, they said, "Oh, I'm surprised you've never had a U either, Jordan." It's like, yeah, just any letter in the alphabet. What did you say, Ben?
Bingo with that.
Yeah. Should do letter bingo to see which one fits in between the D and the N. Do it that way.
Ben, I have a similar problem as well, do you? With people struggling with Ben.
Oh wow, there's many ways of spelling it. To be fair.
He's a dog.
Hello, we got a dog now.
And then the last one, just to kind of like wrap it all up, end it on a funnier one, is Guy Bailey tweeted and said, "When did you decide to go for the young Rafa look?"
I saw that. Yeah. I'll take that, young Rafa. I think that's more offensive to poor Rafa than myself. Do you know what it was? I used to have quite longer hair, and it was, I don't know if anyone remembers Warnock. One of the many, well, probably the most famous Warnock dig of the season was he'd kind of been, it was just before the lockdown in November, and he'd kind of drew from the Hartlepool Mail, Joe Nicholson, and asked a question, and Neil had said, "Bloody hell, Joe, you need to get yourself for a haircut. The closing soon, their dresses, it's your last chance." And then he just turned and he said, "You'll not have to worry about that, Craig, because you haven't got any." I'm 29-year-old, and like,
absolutely,
I had longer hair at the time. And I had this like ridiculous fringe that I shouldn't have ever had, really, but it was there. The fact that my hairline is very badly receding, has been receding for many years, and it was at that point I just thought, you know what, the hair needs to go on it. I guess if you want to call it a Rafa look, that's what I went for. One of my friends, the graphic that obviously got, I was replying to them. One of my other friends sent us kind of screenshotted it and sent us a message on WhatsApp earlier. He just said, "That picture does nothing for your mind, Craig. You've got a right hot dog head."
Bloody hell.
Thanks for that.
Rinsed on social by your own
I think everybody's got the same idea as Warnock. Just get on me, do you think?
Yeah, I know. Just bullying you now, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
But that was the last question. So unless you've got anything, Ben, that's everything from me.
Yeah, I think same here. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, mate, for coming on. Really appreciate it. It's been lovely to talk to you. Hopefully, we can do something later on down the line, or get someone else on with us, and you could join in as well. And yeah, that's what, like I say, we try to do here. It's like kind of for audio content, and things that we think people might want to see.
Yeah.
Like you say, yeah, it's been a pleasure, mate. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, thanks very much for having us on. It's I've really enjoyed coming on and doing it, and just something different. And as I say, nice for me to kind of have a bit of a platform to help Middlesbrough fans get to know me a bit better as well. Obviously, so early in covering the club for the Gazette. So no, thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome, mate. Like I say, fingers crossed when all this kind of goes away, we'll do something else. We'll do like a meet up or something daft like that, and yeah, we'll do something different next time. But yeah, like I say, thank you very much, buddy. And I'll see you next time.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much, lads. Cheers.
No
It's
worries.
great.
See you later on.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.